Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah Inayat for the invitation again.
Yes, we're looking forward to this discussion that you and I are going to be having on a Friday afternoon during the month of Ramadan. And Alhamdulillah, there's just so much that you actually bring to this discussion. And again, looking at the realities. And I think just before we were testing, and you were talking about how emotionally drained we can actually get and overwhelmed by what we see around us. And these are obviously realities that we are faced with as Muslims, whether we are a minority in this country or even if we are living in majority Muslim countries.
Certainly, Inayat. We have to take cognizance of the reality of our existence and the space in which we find ourselves. So I've always said this. I mean, for years, we've engaged that being Muslim is essentially political. That means we need to be in a constant state of awareness and alertness. And without a doubt, the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam carries us to that particular point where he says that, the Muslims are one body, the ummah, and if one part of the body is hurting, then the entire body should feel the pain. And we know that the ummah is in constant conflict, it's in constant pain, which means that we should be feeling constant pain, constant conflict. And if you're in that state, there is no way you can fall into this slumber, apathy, the sense of nonchalance, or carry on like everything is fine and everything is normal. That is completely contradictory to the hadith. And anybody who's ever had pain, whether it's a headache, a toothache, you've been cut, you've been shot, whatever it is, when you have pain, that your entire body, all the senses are alert, they are heightened, and you feel everything far more intensely. And so this is the reality of Muslims the world over. It should be the reality of Muslims all world over, exactly as what we see happening now in Gaza. Last week we spoke a little bit about it, and we didn't really get into it, but maybe we can touch again on it today to some aspect. And perhaps, some things that I said could have been misrepresented, which I would like to clarify, and that is about the Uyghur Muslims. But we also forget about the Kashmiris, and what about the Rohingya in Burma? We forget about the Sudanese, the Somali, the Muslims in the DRC. And so throughout the world, and then many Muslims who are facing unnecessary persecution in Western states as minorities, and whether it be in Germany, the United States, in Canada. How many incidences of Islamophobia have you seen where Muslims have lost their lives? I remember Marwa Sherbini in Germany, who was stabbed while she was pregnant, and it was an Islamophobic attack. Think about Charlie Hebdo and all the attacks on Muslims at that point. So we are in a constant state of conflict, and so we are in a constant state of pain. And so we are in a heightened state,
yes,
24/7.
And it's interesting that you say that we are in this constant state, and how this has actually evolved over a period of time. And we've seen it particularly, I would say, in the last 20 odd years, where it's now escalated to levels that we haven't seen before, Quraysha. I think, particularly after 9/11, somehow it gave the powers that be the license to have a go at Muslims in more ways than one. Whether you're living in the West, is through Islamophobia, through the hijab. You speak about the Charlie Hebdos, you speak about the Uyghurs, all of it. And it does appear that there was a plan in mind, because we know prior to that, communism was public enemy number one, the red peril, as they called it. And after communism had gone, it became the green peril, which became Islam, because it's about Islam, it's about ideology, it's about what Islam stands for, which goes against their very principles of democracy, capitalism, you name it, morality, in every way whatsoever. And all these have become specific targets. And I just thought, I'll mention this, and perhaps, if you could give me some of your thoughts on this particular aspect as well, as to why Islam and Muslims have become targets.
No, we haven't just become targets. We have always been targets. So from the very conception of the whole idea of a European identity, that European identity did not exist. And so with the, actually it started in I think 1642 with Spain. At that point, when the Muslim empire was collapsing in Granada, then of course you have this antagonism of Christendom, that absolute hatred of the Muslim, the dark-skinned Moors, and from there you find an evolution into racism. So even before racism was manifest, there was the sense of superiority amongst the Europeans. They were not Europeans at that time. The European identity subsequently developed in response to Islam and Islamic identity. It was not, a natural development, but it was as a result of an Islamic presence that forged this European identity, which was from its very essence antagonistic towards Islam. And I speak about Christendom and not Christianity, because Christendom, exactly as you mentioned about capitalism, has undergirded in it the capitalist racist ideology. But before the Black people became, the demeaned individuals of the world, the Muslims were always considered a significant threat in opposition
Quraysha, I
to.
think we are having a bit of a problem.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Sorry, Quraysha, can I just stop you there for a bit?
Yes.
Perhaps I think what we can do is maybe just to save on bandwidth, I think possibly, I think what I will do is I'm going to stop my cam as well. And perhaps we can do it more in an audio just to get a better quality. Yes, we will do that. In fact, what we're going to do quickly is let's go for a quick break. Let's do an ad break. We'll come back and hopefully we will be able to get Dr. Quraysha on a better quality sound so that we don't lose the importance and also the gist of what Dr. Quraysha Sooliman is talking about, particularly in the light of what we as Muslims are experiencing right across the entire world, and more importantly, how this is actually impacting on us. So we're going to go for a quick break. We'll be back.
To Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving to uplift the disadvantaged and empowering through education and dawah. Donate to the SADN centers, the M.A. Motala Islamic Center, as well as our Islamic centers in Amoti, Imtalumi, Botshabelo, and Castile. Donate your zakat and lillah today. Contact Farooq Sheikh 076-321-0650, Yusuf Mohammadi 072-259-3457, or the SADN head office 031 304 8000. Our account, Standard Bank, account number 050-856-294 for your zakat, or 050-879-790 for your lillah. Dawah through education, education through dawah, the Southern Africa Dawah Network.
Alhamdulillah, Muslims in South Africa finally have access to a fully Sharia-compliant emergency medical takaful and wellness product. As an industry first, Emergivac Sharia offers up to 575,000 Rand emergency medical cover at a private hospital for you and your family. Plus, you receive 24-hour access to private ambulance evacuation, 24-hour armed response services, roadside home, and even appliance assistance services. Emergivac Sharia offers you and your family priceless emergency medical cover at a fraction of the cost of traditional private healthcare. Simply download the Emergivac app and register online, or SMS Sharia to 40777. Emergivac Sharia, for when serious emergencies require seriously fast response.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Well, the time is just gone 5:22, and at around 5:45, I will be handing you over to Maulana Yunus Kawanga, who will take you through to the time of iftar in Johannesburg, which is at around 20 minutes past 6 this afternoon on this 11th day of Ramadan. But we continue our discussion with Dr. Quraysha Sooliman, and we are talking about the realities experienced by Muslims, particularly looking at Islamophobia and looking at our positions both as minorities and majorities in the world. And Dr. Quraysha obviously talks about, she says, as Muslims, and Dr. Quraysha, perhaps, just to bring you back in, Assalamu alaikum once again, where you speak about, the Muslim being a body, and the hadith is very, very clear. And it's a hadith that most of us by now are fully, fully aware of. And we don't see a Muslim ummah where a part of the body is just in pain or hurting. It's actually hemorrhaging. This is how serious the situation is when one looks right across the entire world. You spoke about the Uyghurs, and I had a discussion not very long ago with someone from the Uyghur community. I spoke to someone from the Rohingya community just 2 days ago as well. And with all of this, playing around us, it's just so easy to get into that state of mind where you become depressed, you become hopeless. And, we see this all the time. I suppose people talk to you, Dr. Quraysha. They talk to me definitely outside the mosque. What do we do? This is happening, that's happening. And this is a daily, daily thing that we are actually faced with. And I just needed your thoughts on how does one actually react to these type of situations, and especially where the sentiment is somewhat very, very depressive.
So, Inayat, I've been having a lot of introspection these last few weeks, more specifically going back to my early days when I first went to the Darul Uloom and started meeting with sheikhs, etc., and then started to actually learn the religion of Islam. So, many of us have been born Muslims, but we've not had the good fortune of actually learning our religion. We just practice it parrot fashion. And in so many instances there from that time on, it was always these things that the sheikh would say, and I would get so frustrated with them to say, why are you saying this? It's meaningless. We have to make jihad. We have to fight back. We have to do these things. And now this Ramadan is the first Ramadan where I've actually had to take stock of myself. I know you guys have interviewed me so many times and I've spoken out about many, many things. And I realize now that, in hindsight and in retrospect, there is two different realities. The one reality is the behavior of Muslims and Muslim rulers in terms of the religion, and then the behavior of Muslims and Muslim rulers in terms of politics. And we need to make that distinction. And so we become very despondent. We want to break down. And initially too, there was much of this noise about the Arab leaders and about the Arab world, where's the Arab people, etc., and where are the Muslim leaders. And then I started to shift through the noise and I just started to shut down and rethink everything. And it brought me to a very important point. And that realization is that we need to look at the situation politically and then later assess how to respond to it religiously. So in terms of our religious teachings and what Islam has taught us about these particular situations, for certainly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped us, with the best of tools and how to deal with every circumstance. So, it's true. There's so many people who are feeling down and despondent and depressed, and they're saying, like, what can we do? We're so helpless and our leaders are helpless, etc. But that's not it. That's not how we should respond. The first thing is ask yourself the question, what is it that you expect them to do? And what it is that you expect of yourself to do. That's the first question. Then the second question is you need to be able to contextualize how the Muslim Ummah is hemorrhaging and why it is hemorrhaging. And when you've come to that particular understanding, then the next step you ask yourself is, as a Muslim first, how do I respond? And then as a citizen of a particular state or a particular country, how do I respond? Because there's two responsibilities on us here. So one, yes, certainly we will follow the Islamic guidelines in terms of what Allah has guided us to do in situations of deek. When you're deek, you're constrained and narrowness. But also we have a political responsibility because we are part of a polity, a state. And that means that we pay taxes, etc. We function in the state. We need to call our leaders to account. So South African Muslims have a political responsibility that stems from your understanding of yourself as a Muslim, that you need to do something about what is happening to influence an outcome that will be for the better of the ummah. And so, the last few days, the Zionist trolls on the social media have just tied me to the point, and I said, no, this is useless. I'm getting nowhere. I'm responding, and then 10 come back, and I respond, and another 15 come back, and I'm just wasting my breath. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my energy. And so now I and the sheikh's words kept on going back to my mind, is make dua. And so I'm going to that. And I realized that what I write, what I say, how I respond to them is meaningless. It has absolutely, it's like water off a duck's back. But when I make dua, I am guaranteed of some kind of an outcome, some kind of a response. And I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer my dua because we keep yaqeen, we keep husnul zan, a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is going to respond to our dua. So now on Twitter, on most of my responses, you will see me posting, Allahumma inna naj'aluka fi nuhurihim wa na'udhu bika min shururihim. And then that is the dua that the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us when you're facing an enemy. And also, Allahumma kfinihim bima shayt, which was the dua of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he was leaving Makkah and going to Medina, and he was followed by that Meccan individual, I forget his name, and he was on the horse and he wanted to kill Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made this dua, and then the horse sank in the sand. So, that is our response. That is my first response to the Muslims today, is, go on, like, post, keep the algorithms going, but don't waste your time with typing out words and responses and retaliating to the Zionists. If anything, like what I'm saying is post a badua, post a dua against them. And that is more successful. I think that will be a far more positive interaction with social media today. And since I've been doing that for the last 2-3 days, I'm kind of feeling a bit better. And gives me time also, to then put my mind together to other thoughts. Because when you get drawn into the toxicity of these individuals who are so essentially wicked, it drains you of all your positive energy. So rather, use the Quran, use the Hadith positively and hit them, because it is a weapon. It's like a nuclear bomb. It's far more powerful than anything they have. Use it, and then move on to other things where you can be far more constructive. Inayat?
Well, certainly is. And I think, what you're saying is very, very true. Yes, I can hear you, Quraysha.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. No, I said, what you're saying is very, very true, because I know even yesterday somebody had actually posted something on social media, and asking the question, will the people of Gaza succeed? Will they be victorious? And in fact, and I think I sent that to you as well, and he spoke about the elephant in the room, and he spoke about, they are already victorious. And this because he spoke about the unity, he spoke about how they rallied together, as brothers and sisters, and then he spoke about the division within the Zionist entity. Now that alone tells you, that victory can come in different ways, in different forms. I mean, they see victory in martyrdom, they see victory in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they see victory in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is exactly the way we should be doing as well. And what you're saying, Sister Quraysha, is very, very true. Is all it takes is for one to introspect, to look deep within myself and says, I am reacting in this fashion. I am reacting in this manner. Am I making a difference? Is it doing good for me? Is it doing any harm for me? What impact am I having on somebody else, on the person who is toxic, for want of a better term? So all of this put together again, I think makes a lot of sense. And what perfect time when we are distracted from everything else, the month of Ramadan, to do that introspection and says, you know what, this is what I'm going to do from now onwards.
No, certainly. It definitely, I think this is the best month. And perhaps I think, in a way, I came to that realization now also, because it being Ramadan, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's way of opening us to say, be more constructive in your jihad, because this is a jihad. The social campaign where you go on social media, wherever it is that you're transferring the sharing of knowledge, etc., be far more constructive. And so I'm trying to do that. On the one hand, keep the algorithms going in favor of Palestine, but at the second hand, fire your bullets as much as you can by using Quran and Hadith. And so likewise, in all of the struggles that we are facing, we have to ask ourselves, what can be done? There was this big hoo-ha about the Arabs should boycott, they should not supply oil, etc., to Israel. And then so we were making a lot of stupid statements without realizing what it is that needed to be said. How do you understand it, and how do you apply it? Because as I told you last week, the world in 1970s is not the world in 2023. And so if you look at also, the way in which the world was constituted, the states were developed, etc., and the way in which the US has used its leverage always, the big bully on the stage with the collapse of the Soviet Union, to make sure that anything and everything had to suit its palate before it could be, it could be accepted. So in the same way, for example, in the resolution today, and alhamdulillah, I'm so glad that it got shut down, because what was it trying to do? Firstly, it was built on a mischievous foundation. That's how that resolution was built. And that resolution essentially, again, highlighted that Hamas is the terrorist organization. Had that resolution passed in the Security Council, it would have meant that Algeria, representing the Arab states, the Organization of Islamic Countries, etc., all agree that Hamas is a terrorist organization. And they don't. Like I said, it's only a minority of states that recognize that Hamas is a terrorist organization. So people say, but like what, and at least the ceasefire is better than nothing. We need to think deeply and think far more about these things. And the same way, if you look at the call for an oil embargo, what happened when there was an oil embargo? What was the consequences? One of the consequences was that King Faisal was assassinated. So and also in the way in what they did to Iran. And what the US has been doing to other oil producing companies, for example, Venezuela, when it's not happy with its policies. So, it's important. Muslims need to read. I think Muslims have stopped reading. And the first most significant aspect of that failure to read is the fact that Muslims have stopped reading the Quran. And I see this without a doubt throughout all the different cities and all the different people I engage with. So we are very punctual about our salah, and we're very good about reading our salah. But reading Quran, that seems to have, evaporated from the Muslims. And unless you don't start picking up the Quran and start reading again, to get a full understanding, to get that basira, that hindsight, that insight of things, we're going to really struggle. And likewise, so if you look at the issue of the Uyghurs, if you look at Kashmir, if you look at Pakistan, if you look at the Rohingya, people are saying, yeah, but why not that same attention and all the attention on Palestine? And again, I ask this question, so what is it that you think needs to be done? And if you realize the reality of politics, and the way in which states are constituted, and the way in which the US has monopolized its hegemony, bullying nations and basically hamstringing them, then you realize that it's far more complicated than just shooting your mouth off. And what I appreciate now, and I said this in that article that I wrote in the Muslim Views and what we discussed a little bit about last week, is that many of the Muslim majority leaders have realized this, and they're making a turnaround. And that turnaround has been in terms of a geopolitical shift and a realignment, a shift away from the West, and now aligning themselves with Britain, with BRICS, with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And if anything, you must have seen it in the Security Council vote today. I mean, the last few days, Anthony Blinken was hopping to all the Arab states, making his case, having this one, as if he was a mannequin, what shall I say, modeling for a bloody show. He was there and doing these extravagant interviews about how the US resolution is calling for a ceasefire, blah, 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 blah. And he was strutting himself in front of the different Arab leaders. But it was, fantastic to watch the Algerian response at the Security Council today. And when he started, the Algerian ambassador said, "I'm speaking on behalf of Algeria and all the Arab states." And that, in my opinion, that was a knockout blow for the US. And that clearly shows that the alignment, the allegiances, and the alliances are shifting and have shifted significantly in terms of the global South and BRICS. People are mocking BRICS, running it down, showing skepticism. And unfortunately, whoever's doing that is missing a monumental shift that is happening in terms of geopolitics and in terms of the way in which the world order is beginning to reshape itself. And all of this has resulted because of Gaza. So yes, Gaza has won. And that one thing that I don't know if you've seen it on social media, that we, the people of the world, think that we are rallying to free Gaza, but it's actually the only place on earth that is free is Gaza, and we all are actually imprisoned. And it is for us to break out of that imprisonment. And so my as we end today, perhaps I'm sure you're running out of time, my most important message to all the Muslim leaders who are Muslim listeners who are listening to this particular show, I would like to say, please start reading the Quran. Pick it up and read it every single day. It's not only Thursday night Surah Kaf and after Maghrib Surah Mulk. Read the Quran and start making an effort to read it with its translation if you don't understand Arabic. And then to even go one step further, try and find tafsir classes or join, different classes. Like for Muslim women in South Africa, I see they're becoming a lot more woke since the COVID, and we've had classes and programs coming up like Ummahat, where they are now sitting and listening and they're learning their religion. It doesn't mean that you're born Muslim, you know Islam. If anything, the born Muslims know the least about Islam than those who've reverted.
Well, Sister Quraysha, Jazakallah khairan so much for that, and as always, for your time. I must say it's been a fascinating discussion with you as always, and a lot of food for thought. Clearly, there is a lot for us to ponder and to think about, to introspect, as you mentioned as well, and inshallah, looking forward to further discussions. But for now, we wish you well. Please take care. Have yourself a wonderful evening ahead.
I would just like to make one last comment, please, and to say that tonight, as the Muslims break their fast and the next few days, please make lots of dua. Make dua for the forthcoming decision that we're anticipating from the ICJ with regards to South Africa's request for additional provisional measures, and make dua for South Africa and for our leadership and the Muslim leaders the world over, because there certainly is, a significant force that is being prepared against us and against all of this. And it is only through dua that we're going to achieve it. So please don't forget, don't only make dua for Palestine. Yes, make dua for Palestine, but make dua for Allah, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, the one who turns the hearts, that he must incline the hearts of the judges at the ICJ to come with a solid decision, because a decision that comes from the ICJ is binding. And so, it has force. And more importantly, make dua for our country, that Allah protects our country, because we are under attack. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah Ta'ala accept, Allah reward all your efforts as well. Sister Quraysha, looking forward to next week once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Quraysha Sooliman with us this afternoon, and once again, alhamdulillah, ending off was another highly inspiring and a fascinating discussion. Once again, giving us a lot of food for thought as a Muslim Ummah. We've just got so much to reflect, to ponder, to think about, but more importantly, we need to action. And as Dr. Quraysha mentions, we need to make lots of dua today. Obviously, as we're heading towards iftar, and every day during the month of Ramadan, and at every given opportunity, let us not only make dua, like Dr. Quraysha says, for the Palestinians and for ourselves and our families. Let us make dua for the broader Muslim Ummah, the leadership, and also looking at all the challenges that we are actually faced with. So inshallah, Allah help us to overcome all of that. And with that, I'm going to be signing off. I'm going to be handing you over to Maulana Yunus Kawanga, who will take you through to the time of iftar in Johannesburg. From myself and the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.